All right, Forgotten City, Chapter 5. Kobe took the switchbacks on the stairs in huge bounds, feet slapping into the stairwells. He ran through the hospital lobby, then burst out through the door before forcing himself to slow down. Night was perilous. If a snatcher got him now, it would not be funny. The flashlights hadn't been far, but he couldn't see them now. He thought about shouting, but that might alert predators, so instead, he'd hurried along the front of the buildings, pausing every few feet to search the darkness for danger. The more he thought about it, the surer he was. There were survivors. They must have found his dad. Why else would they be out here searching? Maybe they'd gone back to the school and found him missing, then followed his trail here. His heart was beating so fast and his skin felt electric. Real survivors! He wondered where their base could be. How many more might be living there? He was almost at the intersection when he heard a growl and stopped dead. He saw the wolf crouched on the other side of the intersection in the doorway of a former bank. It was looking right at him, its flanks panting up and down. The arrow was still in its neck, a trail of dried blood caking its fur. Panic flooded Kobe's veins. How could he have been so reckless? Keeping his eyes locked on the wolf, he slowly brought the crossbow around on his shoulder. The wolf's lip curled back as Kobe raised the sight. He'd have to take it down in one shot. Then the wolf stood up and padded off, and a moment later, Kobe heard muffled voices. He ran a few feet on and took shelter behind an old street stall smothered by a thorn bush. Peering through the knot of branches, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. There were 9 of them, 5 in full-on biohazard suits with headlamps, but 3 in simple gray outfits, their heads bare. And though he couldn't be completely sure, he was pretty convinced they were kids. Like him. Kobe was ready to step out when he spotted the rifles hanging from the adults' shoulders. Big Hanks had been raided in the early days of the pandemic, so there'd been no guns left. Kobe wondered where these had been scavenged from. They looked kind of high-tech anyway, almost military. The adults had sleek black batons hanging from their belts, too. They were casting their arcs of light everywhere, like they weren't even worried about the snatchers. Surely they had to know about them if they'd survived this long. So why were they being so careless? Kobe threw glances at the sky, expecting the gleam of metal at any moment. Had these people come from a place where the scanning drones didn't operate? Maybe another country. Or had they just emerged from some nuclear bunker after years underground? The group moved slowly, carrying out a careful search. Ever so often, the flashlight beam would land on one of the kids, so Kobe got a good look. 2 girls. Kobe could barely believe they were real, like they had walked out of one of the posters in the classroom at Bill Gates. One of them waved, and for a second, Kobe thought she had spotted him until a figure on Kobe's left, near where the wolf had been, ran out from behind the car. It was a boy younger than Kobe. He joined the 2 other kids. One girl stood out because she was the tallest. She looked of Indian descent, maybe, though it was hard to tell from the distance in the dark. She stopped quite suddenly, like she sensed danger, and the others kept walking. They were heading right toward one of the sidewalk grates. Kobe couldn't stay put. He rushed out, "Hey, watch it!" Everyone in the group turned to face him, and 5 rifles lifted too. Kobe couldn't see faces behind the dark visors. "Don't move, kid," one shouted to the others. "D1 settings." English. They were speaking English, with American accents. Kobe blinked, backing off, lifting his crossbow over his head. "Freeze, or we'll shoot you," yelled another. The boy looked scared, head jerking around, and he moved towards the taller girl and one of the adults. Kobe felt pinned to the spot. "I'm looking for my dad," he called back. The suited figures edged closer, their guns trained right on him. One bent his head to his lapel. Kobe didn't understand for a second and then realized he was speaking into some kind of communication device, like in action movies Kobe had watched on the salvage projector at Bill Gates High. Target acquired. A pause, then, Yes, alone. The speaker passed onto the grate. Get off there, shouted Kobe. What are they doing? Don't they know anything? The man looked across to his companion, then nodded. Okay, take him down, D1. No, wait, Kobe shouted. A soft sound, and a rifle flashed. Kobe jerked aside. A small projectile buried itself in the thorn bush at his back. Somehow he had dodged it. Another. Kobe felt something stab into his leg and clutched his thigh. A dart was sticking out. He tore it loose. Please, I'm. The grate in the pavement erupted, throwing the two adults into the air. Another fell back, trying to get away, as colossal choker plant vines emerged from the ground. A guard on the ground fired from his back but missed, and a thick tendril snaked down and scooped him around his waist. Kobe watched in horror as the man was dragged through the gaping hole in the street, screaming. One of the leaders was snatched too, his weapon skittering away as he tried to claw free. The choker plants pulled him down mercilessly beneath the sidewalk. One of the remaining adults turned and ran. Hey, wait, cried the smaller girl. She had olive skin and short dark hair. Kobe stayed back, still clutching the dart in his hand. If it was some sort of tranquilizer, it didn't seem to be having an effect on him yet. The two remaining adults were backing up, moving toward the kids, guns raised and firing at the chokers in rhythmic bursts. One scored a hit, and the huge tentacle shrank back, tip quivering. But with a crack, another grate opened up on the other side of the strangers. Chokers came from that way too, forcing them to turn. The smaller girl screamed as the adults were swarmed by vines. One tried to run, but was snatched around both knees and pulled across the asphalt into the hole. The other was caught between two plants. One had his arm, rifle dangling uselessly, the other his leg, and they lifted him into the air. For a horrible moment, Kobe thought he'd be ripped into two, but the larger choker tore him free. It held him aloft for another second or two, headlamp throwing out crazy spills of light, before wrapping him more tightly in its coils and withdrawing beneath the road. The other kids were frozen in place as the choker plants emerged again, tentacles searching. It wouldn't be long before one of them found the kids, and then it would be a slaughter. Run, shouted Kobe, come on! The kids began to move but headed away from him. Kobe, not knowing what else to do, ran after them. He caught up quickly. They were slower than him. The smaller, olive-skinned girl was stalling, looking back toward the hole. They're dead already, he yelled, grabbing her arm. She gave in and ran too. The road trembled beneath them as they made their way into the street, and Kobe saw cracks splitting the surface. The tips of the vines were breaking through everywhere, and he realized the plant below must have been monstrously huge. Stay behind me, yelled the taller girl, and she led the way, slaloming between the emerging chokers, switching directions sometimes just in time. It's like she knows where they're coming from, thought Kobe. A heavy vine lashed toward him, and he dropped to a skid, sliding beneath its bulk. The whole street seemed to be coming alive. Ahead of them, it was worse. An entire line of plants awaited, twitching their tendril tips in anticipation of a meal. Most of the buildings around them were absolutely coated in vegetation, but at the front of one, Kobe saw a smashed door at the top of a small flight of steps. This way! The girl he was hauling along didn't resist, and the other two followed. They plunged through a curtain of greenery and found themselves in the vestibule of some sort of apartment building. The air smelled chemical and bitter, and Kobe saw a large pile of dried bird droppings next to the bottom of the stairs, and more smearing the walls. That's good. Birds wouldn't roost in here if there were predators. He pounded up the stairs first and realized the others were still waiting at the bottom. We need to get higher, he said. Almost on cue, the first delicate frond of a choker plant entered through the door behind them. The darker-skinned girl pushed past quickly, but the taller one used her body to shield the boy. Kobe led them up the first flight, then a second, then another. He wasn't sure how high chokers could reach, but the one in the streets had been massive. The taller girl was helping the boy, whose breathing was labored. As they passed the third floor, a shriek and a crack of wings made them all jump. Two huge birds, each a couple of feet tall, flapped past, scattering yellow feathers. At the top of the fourth set of stairs, the plant life wasn't as dense. Every wall was still covered with moss, and the stairs sprouted patches of mold. But here and there, one could almost imagine what the place had once looked like before the outbreak. Pictures hung at angles from the walls, and there was dull metal numbers visible on some of the doors. The one marked 43 was open a fraction, so Kobe pushed it farther. Nothing stirred within, and he nodded to the others and led them inside. They found themselves in a small apartment. The furniture was rotting under bushes, and massive fern leaves spilled from the kitchen. A cockroach as big as Kobe's foot scurried away into the green recesses of the bathroom. A pipe must have burst somewhere because one of the bedroom floors had caved in slightly at one end, and a musty swamp sat stagnant in the depression. Kobe found another room containing a baby's crib. The curtains were closed. Wallpaper, where it wasn't peeled away, showed an illustrated alphabet. C, he noted, was cat. Just a normal cat. Apparently, people used to keep them as pets. He found himself doubting if such an animal ever really existed. Cute and cuddly with a fluffy tail. It seemed ridiculous. What were those things? Said the smaller girl. She was shaking a little. Choker plants, said Kobe. Haven't you seen them before? She shook her head. Fion, said the tall girl. She was clutching the boy's jaw in her hand, trying to keep him from flopping. Fion, snap out of it. I think Guardian Krenner got away, said the dark-skinned girl. The other shook her head, looking desolate. Even if he did, he left us, Nikki. She took a deep breath, then looked hard at Kobe. We can't stay here. Kobe had so many questions. Who were they? Did they have a base somewhere nearby? He didn't think the grown-ups could be their parents. They looked more like soldiers. And the girl had just called one a guardian, whatever that meant. But the questions would have to wait. We can't go back into the street, he said. Chokers can sense any movement. I've never seen so many in one place. The curtain stirred and the boy sucked in a gasp. Kobe grabbed him quickly and slid a hand over its mouth. The tip of a choker plant eased silently into the room.